Alright, let's make a video about not buying from people on Marketplace. I'm not sure when it happened, like everybody just became liars and crooks and whatever, but I mean, I'm not that old, but when I was little, uh, people weren't like this. People didn't just BS you on everything, lie about everything, and stick you with it and then block you. I mean, that's not me. I'm a man of my word. I do, if I tell you something's done to it, that's what's done to it. That's one of the reasons I make these videos. It kind of documents what I've done, what I'm doing, and you know, I've got receipts. I've got a lot of receipts. I can give you a receipt for anything you want to see, but I feel that if I do these videos, then it actually shows you what I've done, what I'm doing, what's in it. That being said, the Denali, this is the one that was 6.2 that I put the aluminum 5.3 in it. I was driving the kids across town. Oil pressure on this thing had always been 60. And I had to come to an abrupt stop because the light changed pretty quick and whatever. So anyway, the oil pressure dropped down to about 7. Then the thing shut off. And then it was the classic movie scene where it almost didn't want to crank back up. So it barely cranked back up, surprisingly, the only time it's ever done that. And, of course, I got the kids to where they were going, dropped them off, and then made it across town on Interstate at 80. I mean, the speed limit. It was about 30 pounds of oil pressure. And like I say, this thing was always 60. It didn't matter what it was doing. It was pretty much between 40 and 60. So I was like, well, the dumb move of, oh, well, let's change the oil. So I changed the oil. It looked pretty glittery. And it had 60 pounds of oil pressure again. And then it got warm and back to 10. So, but when you rev it up, it would come up. So anyway, I was telling Michael what it was doing, and he said, oh, it's probably rod bearings. So I was like, perfect. I just had this thing apart, checked everything over, cleaned it up, put it back together. The thing was running great. I was very, very, very pleased with this motor. So pull the front diff out of this all-wheel drive garbage, get everything down, get the pan down, look at the rod bearings, and I'm like, these really aren't that bad. I mean, some of them were kind of trashed. I mean, there wasn't copper showing in that. They didn't look like what I would have expected for zero oil pressure because I let it sit. I didn't drive it anymore after that incident. And then I drove it up here, and it said no oil pressure. Please shut off the engine. And so I didn't listen to it and drove it in here anyways. Then I shut off the engine, and I don't know. So anyway, and then after I told him the rod bearings didn't look that bad, he said, what about the mains? I was like, well, I knew that was coming. So pulled the thrust main off in the middle there, and main is trashed. I mean, you can hear, I mean, you don't need a feeler gauge for that. I mean, you can hear the clearance in that. And what's crazy is this Trailblazer, it wasn't that bad, but it ran like that for like 2 years. He ran the crap out of this aluminum 6.0 that was in this Trailblazer thingy-dingy, and never had a problem. And then this thing, I mean, I have not been running it hard. I've gotten almost 17 miles a gallon with this 5.3 in this truck, and it's got a LS3 cam in it, 243 heads, and I did a little bowl work on them and what have you. I mean, nothing crazy, obviously. But I was so happy with this little engine, and then oil pressure just tanks. So I found this junk on Marketplace. It was, out of a 2010 Avalanche or something. And so it did have it is 58X, obviously, and it doesn't have a 1/2 inch end play. It has a new oil pump. I think they used about 5 tubes of silicone on this engine. And I've never, ever seen anybody use that much silicone. Then not only did they silicone everything, they copper coated everything. The heads, the block, the gaskets, everything. So I broke several of the tabs off the oil pan trying to pry it off from the block. And then it has a new oil pump. I probably just said that. The cam, it had VVT and it had the DOD plate on top. Again, I had to pry off to get it to come off because of all the silicone usage. And so, you know, the ad was, it was a DOD engine, and one of the DOD fails. I was like, okay, cool. I've got a set of lifters, you know, get this thing fixed. Get what I need from here, put it on here, we'll put it back in here, we'll be back riding. And then, so when I get the heads off, the person that did this thing, mosquitoes, they took the DOD trays, pulled the DOD lifters out, and reused the trays with regular lifters. It had brand new non-DOD lifters in it. Had the DOD plate on it. Still had all the VV stuff on it. And then, again, the valve cover on this side, I had to beat it off with a hammer because it was so stuck. And then, you know, the rocker arms were kind of tight, I guess. And then I get over here, and one of the rocker arms was completely backed off. So I don't know. And they weren't even, the rocker arms weren't really tight on this side. It had 243, so, you know, I filled them up and checked them, made sure the valves weren't leaking. The other head, I didn't notice it until, I was cleaning it up and start changing the valve springs for the LS3 camshaft. And, you know, I was checking to see if there was any broken exhaust bolts. And they had like completely screwed up one of the end bolts for the manifold. And then one of the long bolt, whatever these are, those holes, I've never used them. I know one's for the dipstick, but it was completely screwed up. And then I found something else that was screwed up on it. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This head's junk. So anyway, I hope the bottom end's usable, the short block part. I'm gonna check a rod and main and see what they look like. I mean, it turns over good, it feels okay, it looks okay, but whoever worked on this, you know, not everybody needs to be working on cars, and I wouldn't have even had the patience to put that much silicone. If you look over here, I can't even get the gasket off. Like, it has so much glue on there. I mean, I can't even get it off. That's just not necessary. Why even use a gasket at that point? So it looks like it had a new pickup tube and all, but I'm gonna use my pan after I get all the glitter out of it from the other engine. Capped off the bypass, and then standard volume, standard pressure pump. But I don't know, man. I don't know why people have to lie to you about everything. Does that help the sale, or, you know, why do you have to be dishonest? There's no reason for dishonesty. And I noticed it on that, I think I mentioned it on one of the other videos. I went with my buddy and bought a 6.0 from the guy, met him in the gas station, loaded it up and everything, then get home. The ad said it ran perfect, you know, everything's great. Don't even ask questions. Got green antifreeze, and, you know, which these are Dex cool, so it should be red, right? So anyway, that thing had a hole in the block where they had JB welded water jacket. There was a water jacket somewhere in the block over here. They had JB welded it and painted it black, and the bolts that held the exhaust manifold on the head, the moron had taken new bolts, cut off where it was just the head of the bolt, and they looked like super glued it onto the manifold, so it looked like all of the manifold bolts were there. And as soon as my buddy got that engine and everything, it was in the evening, we got home, and then I put it on the stand the next day. I started looking at it and everything, just to, just inspecting it like I did this. And he went back to check the ad or whatever, and the guy had already blocked him. And then come to find out, we found another post later where the guy had screwed some other guy over, not as bad as he screwed us, but I mean, it's just pathetic how people have gotten over the years, how they feel the need to lie about everything with their car, with just life in general. I just don't get it. You need to, I don't see how this engine was even running. She claims it was in her Avalanche, I believe it was, a 10 Avalanche, and then it made a noise or something and quit running. So she had a son that was had LS swap something, I don't know, but Colorado maybe. That seems to be the popular thing. But the funny thing is it was a lesbian, and one of the roads we had to turn on was Dyke Street. So I thought that was pretty comical. But anyway, just my rant for the day. Just some things to look for when you're going to buy one of these things. I'm used to be more of a trusting person. Somebody tells you what it is, you're like, okay, great. I'm just need an engine to try to get my truck back going. And then, I did turn it over, made sure it turned over, and then looked over it. It came with the intake, throttle body, fuel rails, and that's the TT or the new body style TBSS intake or whatever. But and also from that other guy that with that 6.0 that had the glued on bolts and painted block with a hole in it. I kind of looked at this one a little closer. I mean, you could tell it had been in because of all the goop and everything. If I hadn't needed, the crankshaft and everything out of it, I probably would have left it. But anyway, that's just my little rant for now. And then just be careful when you buy anything from anybody these days, because there's a good likelihood that they're lying about it.